Shalom Aleichem. Welcome. This is the first of a series of talks I'm going to give on Neo-Hasidism, a seeker-friendly Judaism. There'll be 10 of these, each of them about 5 to 8 minutes long, in which I want to tell you what Neo-Hasidism is, how I understand it, and why I think it's a way for seekers to find their way back into the Jewish tradition and into Jewish religious language. A Jewish way of talking to God, a Jewish way of talking about God. And if you don't like that English word G-O-D, guess what? I don't like it very much either. We'll talk about that one more next week. Neo-Hasidism has been around for 100 years, and yet it's new again. It's been renewed several times in the course of its history, and this is a Neo-Hasidism for the second decade or third decade now of the 21st century. The problems are different, the questions are different. We're in a postmodern or a post-postmodern era, and therefore we have to rethink lots of things that were said even within Neo-Hasidism a century ago. What is Neo-Hasidism? It's the idea that there are found within Hasidism, within the teachings of the Hasidic masters, ideas, attitudes toward life, bits of human living wisdom that need to be shared with people outside that tradition. Hasidism does not belong to the Hasidim alone. It belongs to all of us who have inherited Judaism, and it belongs to the whole of humanity. Just the way wisdom teachers from other traditions belong to all of us, and we learn from them. There's so much to learn from Hasidism for people outside that community as well as within it. So this is an attempt to recreate Hasidic teachings for people who are engaged fully in this modern and postmodern world that we live in. Now, in order for you to understand who I am and how I come to these audacious thoughts, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I've been involved in studying Hasidism for 65 years. I know that because when I first began, I was 19 years old, and I used to write my name and the date I acquired it inside of books. My copy of Sefer Baal Shem Tov says the Hebrew year Tashyat, which is equivalent to 1959. So I know exactly when I began studying. I never was interested in joining the Hasidic community as it exists today. Many people attracted to Hasidism want to become a Chassid and want to go join one of the Hasidic communities that exist. Some are more friendly to outsiders, some less, as a lot of you undoubtedly know. That was not my path. I was always too much of a modern person, too much of a universalist, too much of an American in some ways, a liberal thinker, an internationalist, to be able to lock myself into the confines of a world outlook as narrow as that. I did not want to become a Breslover or a Chabadnik or a Bobov or a Belzer. What I really wanted was to join the circle of the Baal Shem Tov, or even more, the circle around the Maggid of Mezrich, which had such a fascinating group of people that I've spent most of my life studying them, translating them, teaching them, reading them over again. But I couldn't do it, of course. The Baal Shem Tov died in 1760. The Maggid passed away in 1772. Those circles exist only in the writings of their disciples. So I tried to read them and interpret them and recreate them. Of course, the writings themselves are a recreation, because these were almost all drushes, sermons, homilies given aloud, orally, in Yiddish. They were not written down originally. They were for the oral communication with people in the town. Only afterwards, sometimes the writer himself, sometimes their disciples or children, wrote the teachings down in Hebrew. They translated them into Hebrew because Hebrew was the more respectable language for proper communication of Divrei Torah. So they wrote them down in a weak and often difficult to understand Hebrew, garbled sometimes. And you have to take them, you have to develop a lot of skill in reading them, understand what is said and what is only half said or skipped over, and put them together again. And that's what I've been doing for a very long time. When I engage in this work, whether I do it in Hebrew, and I now have books in Hebrew as well as English, or in English translation, and I find myself reshaping these teachings so that you'll be able to understand them, guess what? I find these teachings and the teachers through them reshaping me as well. And I have been amenable to that. I've been willing to let them shape me once I realized what was happening. The first book I wrote, the first big book I wrote, was a biography of Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav called Tormented Master. Maybe some of you have seen it. And with Rabbi Nachman, I felt very much that he was giving me insight into himself. He was allowing me to understand him because he figured as long as I was working on him, he would have a chance to work on me as well. That was the deal, and I accepted it. I've been doing that now. I just wrote a recent book on Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev called Defender of the Faithful, and I felt the same way with him. I was working on him, and he was getting a chance to work on me. I hope he was at least as successful as I was. I hope he was more successful than I was. Now, another word, a final word about who I am. I am not a Hasidic Rebbe. I'm a professor. I'm a teacher. I'm a theologian, which means I think about these things and write about them all the time. But above all, I'm still a seeker myself. All these years later, I'm still seeking. I do not have all the answers. If you want somebody who has all the answers and can tell you exactly what to think and exactly how to live, I'm afraid I'm not your guy. I really believe in Neo-Hasidism as a religion for seekers who don't want to find the answer and stop seeking. Because a quest isn't like a question. A question gets an answer. You get an answer to your question, you're satisfied, you move on. But a quest is something that goes on forever. The more you seek, the more you want to know. The more you want to know, the further you're seeking, and the less you feel you know in the end. Rabbi Nachman said, Tachlis ha'idiyah asher lo neda. The end of knowing is that we know nothing at all. So welcome to this course for seekers. That's what we're doing here. Next week, I'm going to begin really talking about the content of Neo-Hasidism, and I'll talk about that very difficult and very important question of what we mean when we talk about God and what we don't mean. And if that word G-O-D is hard for you, don't be scared away, because there are lots of people who live without that God, without that word, who are still very much people of faith and Neo-Hasidic seekers. So join us next time. Meanwhile, shalom, shalom, wonderful to be with you.